Thanks for joining us and welcome to The World Today. Here's what's coming up on the program. 25 people arrested by German authorities on suspicion of plotting raids to overthrow the government. Russian President Vladimir Putin says there's no point in conducting an additional call-up of Russian reservists to fight in Ukraine. Plus, Georgians elect Raphael Warnock as senator, meaning the Democrats now control the U.S. Senate. Welcome again to the program and thanks for joining us. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. 25 people have been arrested in raids across Germany on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. A group of far-right and ex-military figures are set to prepared for a day X to storm the Reichstag parliament building and seize power. A man named Henrik XIII from an old aristocratic family is alleged to have been central to their plans. According to federal prosecutors, he is one of two alleged ringleaders among those arrested across 11 German states. The plot is set to include members of the extremist Reichsbürger, that's the Citizens of Reich movement, which has long been in the sight of German police over violent attacks and racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. They also refuse to recognize the modern German state. Other suspects came from the QAnon movement who believe their country is in the hands of a mythical deep state involving secret powers pulling the political strings. Interior Minister Nancy Faeser assured Germans that authorities would respond with the full force of the law against the enemies of democracy. An estimated 50 men and women are alleged to have been part of the group set to have plotted to overthrow the republic and replace it with a new state modeled on the Germany of 1871, an empire called the Second Reich. Italian police have also arrested a 64-year-old former German army officer connected to the far-right group suspected of preparing a violent overthrow of the state in Germany. Police said the man was arrested in a hotel in the central city of Perugia, where material related to the subversive activity of the organization was found. A statement said procedures to extradite the suspect have begun. Meanwhile, the Kremlin also says there will be no question of any Russian involvement in the plot to overthrow the German state. According to Dmitry Peskov, the government spokesperson, it appears to be an internal problem for Germany. He says there can be no question of any Russian interference. German prosecutors have been confirming one of the accused reached out to representatives of Russia, which the group saw as its central contact for establishing a new order. It said there was no evidence the representatives had responded positively to the request. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says he was shocked by allegations that a Conservative peer has profited from COVID-19 contracts awarded the pandemic. Well, Michelle Mone, who sits as a Conservative in Parliament's upper chamber, House of Lords, has been accused of having links to PPE MedPro, which won contracts over worth £200 million in personal protective equipment. According to local media, Mone had brought MedPro to the attention of the ministers at the beginning of the pandemic. A report in the British paper, The Guardian, accused her of profiting personally from the business, charging her lawyers who had previously denied. Mone has since taken leave of absence from the House of Lords.
Fundamentally different values to ours and an authoritarian leadership intent on reshaping the...
Would my right honourable friend agree with me that China is more than just, as he put it, a systemic challenge, but in fact an expanding, serious geopolitical threat?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, China is indeed a country with fundamentally different values to ours and an authoritarian leadership intent on reshaping the international order, but actions speak louder than words. And that's why we passed the new National Security and Investment Act. Just recently, we used that act to block the sale of Newport Wafer Fab. And this week, with our announcement of Sizewell C, we ensured that China's state-owned Nuclear Energy Corporation will no longer be a part of the project. This government making sure that we protect our country's security.
And the U.S. state of Georgia has a new senator has a new senator. I beg your pardon. Raphael Warnock won yesterday's election at the runoff in Georgia, fortifying the Democrats' Senate majority. His defeat was narrow. He defeated Walker with 99% of the estimated votes counted. Warnock led Walker by 50.8% to 49.2%, according to Edison Research. The contest went to a runoff after neither candidate secured 50% of the vote on November 8th. Walker, who's known as an American football legend, a political newcomer, joins a string of defeated candidates endorsed by former President Donald Trump, is currently seeking the Republican White House nomination again in 2024.
Well, hello, everybody. Y'all settle down now. And after a hard-fought campaign, or should I say campaigns, it is my honor to utter the four most powerful words ever spoken in a democracy. The people have spoken. Now, there are those who will look at the outcome of this race and say that, yes, you're right, we won. But there are those who would look at the outcome of this race and say that there's no voter suppression in Georgia. Let me be clear. Just because people endured long lines that wrapped around buildings, some blocks long, just because they endured the rain and the cold and all kinds of tricks in order to vote, doesn't mean that voter suppression does not exist. It simply means that you, the people, have decided that your voices will not be silenced. Are you ready, Georgia? I'm ready. Stand up for workers. Stand up for women, to stand up for our children. I'm ready to build a stronger Georgia. God bless you. Keep the faith and keep looking up.
And with that, the U.S. Democrats now control the Senate. Now, police in Indonesia say that an explosion at a police station in the city of Bandung in West Java province is a suspected suicide bombing. National Police spokesperson Ahmad Ramadan added that the local police are closely coordinating with the counterterrorism unit to investigate the incident. One person is said to have been killed, several others wounded shortly after a man with a knife entered the building. The source of the blast was not immediately clear. Islamic militants have carried out attacks in the world's largest Muslim-majority nation, including at churches, police stations, and venues frequented by foreigners.
Serta Densus 88 AT Polri. Yang dilakukan adalah pertama mengamankan lokasi dengan melakukan sterilisasi sebelum dilakukan olah TKP. Kemudian yang kedua melakukan olah TKP.
And we'll return now to our lead story today, which is the plot by the German raid, arresting 25 people in connection with a suspicious plotting to overthrow the government. A far right and ex-military figures are said to prepare for Day X. to storm the Reichstag Parliament building and seize power. More arrests are expected today, according to the German government. Correspondent in London, Teniola Oyetayo, joins us for more. Tenny, we know that this really is shocking. Never heard of a coup plot in Germany for a while, not even in Europe in modern times. I mean, we've heard about the coups in Africa, but really, really odd hearing this happening in Europe.
Yeah, hi Marachi. It's really big news today. The raids which happened at dawn are being described as one of the biggest anti-extremism operations in modern German history. So it's really taken Europe by surprise. From what we're hearing, 3,000 officers took part in 150 operations in 11 of Germany's 16 states, with 2 people also arrested in Austria and Germany. Well, just to give a bit more information, the plotters are said to include members of the extremist Reichsbürgers movement, which has long been on the sides of German police over violent attacks and racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. They also refuse, to recognize the modern German state. We also know that other suspects came from the Canon movement, who believe their countries in the hands of a mythical, what they call a mythical deep state involving secret powers pulling the political strings. Well, investigators are thought to have got wind of the group when they uncovered a kidnap plot last April involving a gang who called themselves United Patriots.
Thank you for the background, Tenin. I know that, Germans must have been shocked about this, as well as governments across Europe. We've heard from the Kremlin, the presidential spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, saying that no doubt that anyone could point fingers at Russia on this one. But, there was an arrest made in Italy, wasn't there? And they found that the person in Italy had connections, with the other group in Germany. Have you heard anything about, how big and how wide the raids could go from here?
We do know that we're expecting more arrests in the next couple of days, and so far we don't really have much information as the investigations go on. We do know that the German Interior Minister has assured the public that things are under control. So in the next couple of days, we do expect more arrests, and with arrests being made in Austria and Italy, it could go deeper. We could see more arrests across Europe. So we'll have to wait and see as investigators continue and those arrests are made.
Isn't it shocking? We still haven't heard anything from the British government. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was in Parliament today answering Prime Minister's questions. Do you think this came up at all?
It didn't really come up. I think the Prime Minister is sort of focused on in-house issues, mostly with the strikes that are facing Britain ahead of Christmas. We haven't really heard much from the British government with regards to this, but I'm sure in the next couple of days we should be hearing more reactions, especially as Russia gets involved in this, and also more arrests are made in the next couple of days.
Do Britons feel insulated, from the problems of the rest of Europe, having pulled out of the European Union a few years back? Does it feel like that sometimes for them?
Well, I think that you can't really get away from the security situation across Europe, especially with what's happening with Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. I think this comes as a shock to many in Europe, and also people would want to feel safe. So I'm sure Britons will be looking forward to the reaction of the government with regards to this. So we'll just have to wait and see with regards to that.
Our London correspondent, Teniola Oyetayo, thank you for joining us on the program. Well, a rescue operation is underway to save an 8-year-old boy who has been struck in a narrow well in India for over 16 hours. Tanmay Sahu fell into the bore well in the central state of Madhya Pradesh while playing with friends on Tuesday evening. Tanmay, officials say, stuck at about 55 feet down into the well. It was just 400 feet deep. Rescuers are pumping oxygen to the child, but layers of mud mean they cannot assess his condition. The state's disaster response forces helping with the rescue efforts in Bag12 district. The magistrate says it could take a couple of more hours to get the child out. And back to the United States. Earlier, we heard the winner of the Georgia runoff, Raphael Warnock, celebrating his victory at the polls yesterday. Well, his challenger, Herschel Walker, who only went away with about 49% of the votes, addressed his supporters at the end of the night.
Things I want to tell all of you is you never stop dreaming. I don't want any of you to stop dreaming. I don't want any of you to stop believing in America. I want you to believe in America and continue to believe in the Constitution and believe in our elected officials most of all. Continue to pray for them because all the prayers you've given me, I felt those prayers. I want to thank all my team as well, Team Herschel, because they put up with a lot. There's no excuses in life, and I'm not going to make any excuses now because we put up one heck of a fight. And I said, that's what we got to do because this is much bigger. This is much bigger than Herschel Walker. And I told someone this the other day. I said, you guys, I've done a lot of stuff. You talk about Heisman Trophy, you talk about all the athletic awards, business awards I won, but the best thing I've ever done in my whole entire life is run for the Senate seat right here. And as I said, you can't blame no one because I want you to continue to believe in this country, believe in our elected officials, and most of all, stay together. Don't let anyone separate you. Don't let anyone tell you that we can't. Because I'm here to tell you we can. And I'm here to tell you we can. And as I said early on, God is good. And he's a good God. All the time, he's a good God. So I want to say, I'm never going to stop fighting for Georgia. I'm never going to stop fighting for you because you're my family.
Back to the UK now. Britain's Prince, or rather in the US still, Britain's Prince Harry and Meghan don't have that long to sell their royalness. Royal biographer Andrew Morton says in an interview just a few days before the first trailer dropped for the couple's new documentary series. When asked about the upcoming Netflix show, Morton, who recently penned a book, The Queen, said that Meghan and Harry have got a commodity to sell under their royalness or their association with the royal family, which is what they're selling, of course. The first 3 episodes of the series will be available from Thursday, tomorrow. The streaming service, Netflix, told customers amid widespread speculation over what the couple, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, will say about other royals. Welcome back to the program. We have more now from our correspondent, Maria Bird, who's been monitoring the Georgia runoff, monitored yesterday, and then the reactions today. Maria, talk to us about what the reactions have been to Georgia. I mean, this is the second time, in a major election that Georgia would have to go into a runoff. I know we've been talking about the elections for some days now, but really, how are people reacting to Warnock's win this morning?
Well, this has been historic for Americans. I think it's really going to be one of those historical times where we're going to be looking back at this for quite some time. This is not only, I think, a historic win for Democrats, but the win is one that I think that will be shared by Democrats for years to come. Warnock had a very riveting acceptance speech. The projections were made late yesterday evening in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. And so I think that what's going to happen with Senate, with them having the majority at this time of 51 votes, that they will begin to be able to start to build out what is going to be for the remaining 2 years of the Biden administration. But we still remember that the House is majority Republican, so that will create somewhat of a challenge even for Senate. But this is, I think, a moment that many Americans have been waiting for, to be very honest.
He said the people have spoken, and that's pretty correct. Of course, looking at the figures, 50.8% to 49.2%. That's quite the margin for this election contest. But you compare that to what happened in the first election in the midterms on November 8th. Is that really a wide gap he's given to Herschel Walker?
This is not a wide gap, and I think that's what most Americans are going to begin to watch, especially the Democratic Party, to see how much support Herschel Walker actually had. He had quite a bit of support when you talk about having about over 1 million votes. I mean, that is quite a lot for someone that is very new to the scene. It also shows that former President Trump does still have quite a bit of an impact on the Republican Party. But I think the other question is, what does this mean for African Americans? This is also a first time we've seen in recent history where you've had two African American men against one another for such an important seat, and having very different perspectives on the future and the next steps of the country.
You make a really valid point, Maria. I hadn't even thought about that. You know, two African Americans, young men for that matter, quite unlike the presidential election that had two men in their 70s running for office. So it is different, isn't it? The fresh young minds trying to get into Senate. And then Warnock goes into Senate and then, you know, tips the balance, you know, in the Senate. And now the Democrats have control. What would that mean for the Republicans? And then who heads the Senate now? Or who leads the Senate? Beg your pardon.
The Senate will be led by the Democrats. They have the majority of the votes. And so that will probably play out in time over the next few weeks as we're heading toward the holiday recess period. So we'll see that. But what we also will begin to see is kind of what we can project for 2023, what will be those areas of focus for the Democrats, for the Senate. Some of the bills that have been sitting there, we know that gun reform is a huge factor, which will be discussed coming up on this next session within the Senate and the House. And so I think this is also setting the pace for what 2023 will look like and what the 2024 elections will look like.
Indeed, it will. And Walker joins the list of other candidates in the Republican Party who have lost in the elections. Many of them were endorsed by former President Donald Trump, but people also blaming him for what's happened in Georgia.
Yes, I think former President Donald Trump is going to have a very interesting kind of focus point for what's coming up in the next 2024. He's announced he's running, but is he going to have the same sort of support that he has had for previous years? I think the Republican Party is beginning to question whether or not he is going to be their candidate. I think the Republican Party is also looking to see where do they want to stand. You know, there's been a clear separation between the MAGA Republicans and those traditionalist Republicans. And so are we going to begin to see a reversal kind of back to the days of the George Bush era of that type of Republican so that they can have a viable opportunity in 2024? I think the Republicans are beginning to realize that if they follow through with Herschel Walker types, Daniel Cox in Maryland that ran for office that are very strongholds of the Trump era of the Republican Party, that they might not see victory in 2024.
Speaking of 2024, Maria, former President Donald Trump still wants to run, wants to get the Republican nomination to run in the presidential elections in 2024. Well, having seen the performance of the Republican Party in this year's midterms, what are his prospects looking like right now?
Well, at this time, he's the only one we're hearing about. And I think the Republican Party is going to start to figure out what that looks like. Just like the Democratic Party, we have not yet heard a definite affirmative that President Biden will run for re-election. He did state very early on that he was going to consider running in the next election cycle, but he has not confirmed that. And so what we're going to see is the Republican National Convention. That committee is going to come together to choose who they believe they're going to support and who will be the leading candidate for 2024. So that information, I think we'll probably begin to see sometime in mid-January. As soon as we come back into session, they'll start talking about the prospects for presidency.
And why is ageism not an issue in the upcoming elections? You have a President Biden who'll be over the age of 80 by 2024, probably 82 thereabouts, and then you have a Donald Trump who's gradually approaching 80. Why are Americans not concerned about this?
Well, that's a very interesting perspective. Americans have discussed that, I think, very early in even the Trump era when he was running for office about the age of the president. We also know that during the George Bush era, Dick Cheney was older and had a heart condition and actually had to have medical teams following him where he went different places. And so that will likely become part of, I think, the discussion points. Now, I think what we'll begin to see is whoever the Democratic National Committee and also the Republican National Committee supports, that will give us some guidance into what they believe the American people want. So if you begin to see a younger candidate, much like former President Barack Obama, much if you think about the Kennedy era as well, then we'll know kind of that age is going to become a factor. But I think today, that has not become the focal point. I think Americans were looking to stabilize democracy, and we're looking for someone that had the experience to do that. And that's really where President Biden's strength came in, despite the age.
Maria, thanks again for joining us and for the explainers. Well, back in Africa, a Mozambican court has sentenced the son of the former president and others to prison for their role in the tuna bonds corruption scandal. Ex-President Armando Guebuza's son, Nabi Guebuza, and two former heads of intelligence, Gregorio Leo and Antonio Doracero, each got 12 years behind bars. 8 of their co-accused were convicted and sentenced to between 10 and 12 years. The crimes committed have brought consequences whose effects will last for generations, George Efegiano Baptista said while handing down these sentences. A total of 19 people have been charged with blackmail, embezzlement, and money laundering for their alleged roles in Mozambique's biggest financial scandal. 8 have been acquitted for lack of evidence. The scandal involved the country borrowing more than $2 billion from international banks, much of it without the knowledge or approval of the country's parliament, triggering an economic crisis. South Africa's Justice Ministry has confirmed the man who killed the South African anti-apartheid hero Chris Hani has been released on parole. Last month's decision by the Constitutional Court to free Janus Wallace drew widespread criticism in South Africa. Mr. Hani's widow described it as diabolical. A hugely popular senior member of the ANC's military wing was shot dead in 1993, but it was a failed attempt to stop the country from changing from white minority rule to democratic rule. Last week, Wallace received treatment in a prison hospital after he was stabbed by a fellow inmate. Mali's transition leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, says the future of the UN mission in Mali will depend on a change of strategy and improved relations with the country's army. Colonel Goïta tweeted that he had held discussions with the UN head of peacekeeping operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who has been on a 2-day tour of Mali ahead of the renewal of MINUSMA's mandate. A state-linked lessor quoted Mr. Lacroix as saying that this was about ensuring there was an agreement between Mali and the UN so that when the time comes, the recommendations at the level of the UN Security Council are in line with the objectives of the Malian authorities. UN peacekeepers have been in the country since 2013, but relations with Bamako have recently deteriorated. Several countries, including Germany and Cote d'Ivoire, have announced plans to withdraw from the mission or scale down their presence.
And the People's Choice Award goes to Carrie Underwood.
Well, if you missed it last night, the People's Choice Awards held. Actors Ryan Reynolds and Adam Sandler, along with musicians Lizzo and Shania Twain, were honored at the awards in Santa Monica, California. Reynolds was presented the People's Icon Award by his Free Guy co-star Lil Rel Howery. Director Olivia Wilde picked up the Drama Movie Award for psychological relationship film Don't Worry Darling, which stars Florence Pugh and Harry Styles. The award for Best Drama was given to Grey's Anatomy, which is in its 19th season. The show's star Ellen Pompeo, who will leave the medical drama next year, was named the Best Female TV Star. On the music side, singer Carrie Underwood, whom we saw earlier, was named Best Country Music Artist of the Year, and the Music Icon Award was given to country star Shania Twain, who also performed a medley for her hits.
For the entire production, and it is such an honor to accept it on behalf of our entire Don't Worry Darling family.
The Comedy Movie Star People's Choice Award goes to Adam Sandler, Hustle.
Thank you so much. This means a lot. I appreciate everybody taking the time and voting and doing all that stuff. And I love you, to my family, to my wife, my kids, my mom, my brothers, my brother, my sisters, everybody. I love you guys.
That don't impress me much. And the People's Choice Award goes to Carrie Underwood.
This award is definitely, well, this whole night is all about the fans, and I certainly have just the most incredible fans. You guys have supported me for many years, especially out on the road this year. So thank you guys so much for all the love. Thank you for this. What a wonderful early Christmas present. Thank you.
I think my producers must be fans of Carrie Underwood to have repeated that again. Our Christmas can never come too soon for Johan Wenner, the world's biggest purveyor of handmade Christmas decorations, whose shop in the Swiss city of Basel attracts shoppers from around the world. Wenner says a shop that delivers to big companies in New York, London, Paris, Rome, China and Japan had around 300 customers buy something last Saturday. A business that employs a dozen staff in Basel rose from an antique shop in Basel's Old Town. Christmas fans find unusual designs, traditional jewelry from European glass blowers and Swiss souvenirs. Like most companies, Warner had to slightly increase its prices from 3% to 5%. But its production is not yet impacted by the energy crisis, as the production starts in January. And Christmas in Mexico is marked by the bloom of traditional poinsettias, or Nochebuena, the Christmas Eve, plants known for their large red colorful petals. Poinsettias can be seen in homes, businesses and public areas throughout the country during the holiday season, and residents of Mexico City travel to the flower market of Xochimilco to purchase poinsettias direct from growers. Vendors say they expect to sell more than 3 million flowers this year during the Christmas season. At the beginning of the week, hundreds of red flowers are seen in the streets, the iconic Reforma Avenue, where locals and tourists come every day to take photos near them. In Mexico, the flowers are known as Nochebuena because it reaches its magnificence during Christmas, thriving in a mixture of crisp and sunny weather. There are a number of varieties with genetic modifications ranging in size and in color. Yeah, and we can say Christmas is in full bloom. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.